bro. But so IMDb is usually not 100% accurate. Were you born and raised in Albany?
Outside of Albany, in a place called Troy, just on
Oh,
the other
okay,
side of the
cool.
river. Yeah, yeah.
One really funny thing, and again, when you work on a movie set, you never know what people talk about. But on Friday too, which we'll talk to about later, but
Hmm.
there was a guy Johnny in special effects from Albany.
Are you talking about John Caglione?
Yes.
Yeah, we grew up together. We were best friends.
Oh, that's really weird. Okay, cool. I was gonna
Started.
say, like, the chances of two people again, it's like, even, I wouldn't even know how many people are in Albany, but you never think of it like a major city. I know sometimes when
Yeah,
you're in a city, like when I lived in Portland, even though it was like, wow, this is kind of like a major city, you see the same people in your neighborhood. All you see the same kind
yeah.
of people, but oh wow,
Yeah,
that's neat.
Albany's a pretty big city, but I was born in Troy, which is across the river from Albany. But Albany is was a big city. It's the capital of New York,
Yeah, yeah.
so pretty big city. But John and I were born in Troy, just a few blocks from each other, and we hung out. And in high school, we made movies together. That's where he really started doing his special effects and makeup. He would practice on me, blow
Oh
me
my
up,
god.
shoot me, and all sorts of crap. It was a lot of fun.
Wow, cool. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So how did the acting begin? Growing up in Troy, was it watching movies, TV? Was it like a school play? How did that all begin?
My mom was a singer in a trio called the Darlin Sisters, and so there was show business in the family.
Oh,
But
that's
ever
cool.
since I was a kid, I think I was just Charlie Chaplin was an idol and an inspiration to me. And when I had all his Super 8 movies, and I'd watch them in the den in the darkness, and I was just captivated by him. And I said, I want to do something in the movie industry. So I decided I'm going to be a film director, and that was my goal. So I got myself a little, like at 10 years old, I got myself a director's chair and put the name. My name's Russell Todd, and I put the name Todd Russell. I thought that was going to be a great name, and I put that on the
That's
chair,
great.
and I would sit in that chair and dream about it. And I started making home movies, and I entered the Kodak Young Filmmakers Award contest, and I made a western in the den, and I carved out like saloon doors, that would go open, like this when you go through them. I taped them to the entryway, and there was already a bar in the room, and I asked some friends to come over. We're just kids, and we dressed up western, and I made this little western on a Super 8 camera, and I
Wow,
submitted
that's
it to
awesome.
Kodak, and I won an honorable mention. I won an award from Kodak. So I thought, wow, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then I took a map of the United States and I placed it on the floor of the kitchen. And I had a little plastic car in New York and a little plastic car in Los Angeles. And I did some stop motion photography. I started learning about animation, and I had them
Nice.
coming next to each other. And like in Oklahoma somewhere, they hit and exploded and burst into flames. And that all went really well until I removed the cars and the map, and I had burned the linoleum of the floor in the kitchen.
Yeah,
I wasn't even thinking about that, but
yeah.
my parents sure were after that. And they said, "No more of this crap." Um, but so I always wanted to do that, and then I guess I went to college. I went to Syracuse University to
Oh,
study
sweet. When were you
filmmaking.
there? Late
What's that?
70s, I guess. Late
70. I
70s.
graduated high school in 76. Went right there. Yeah.
Sweet.
And then so I started in the film program there, but then they had an acting program too. And someone said, "Oh, you should, go over there also and do some acting." I said, "Well, I'll go and I'll take some classes," which I did. And then I wrote a woman named Verna Fields, who was the editor of Jaws, and she won
Oh
the
my
Academy
god.
Award for editing
You just
Jaws.
read my mind because there's a connection to Syracuse and Jaws. She was there at that time.
Well, she was in Los Angeles. She was out here.
Oh, okay. But Carl Gottlieb, who wrote Jaws, based
Right.
obviously off the Peter Benchley, he went to Syracuse
Oh, did you? I didn't know
years
that.
before you.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's cool. But I wrote her in my sophomore year, maybe. And I said, I like the movie very much. I compared myself to Steven Spielberg with a few movies I made, because he started as a kid. And I sent
Yeah.
her a copy of one of the films that won the honorable mention from Kodak. And I got a letter back from her. I think, holy shit. And she said, "I'm really impressed with you. I liked watching your movie. I think you have talent. I'd love to meet you." So I said, "Well, can you come to Syracuse? So, I'm in the film program. Maybe you can be a guest lecturer." And she came. So it
Oh
was
my god.
unbelievable. And so, I was like the hot guy on campus at that moment because I brought this big person to to the university to talk. So she came, we became friends. She goes, if you want to come this summer, I can get you a job as a tour guide at the studio. But you, unlike the other tour guides, will have free roam with the studio. I'll be sure that you can watch filmmaking and see what's going on and all of that. So it's really cool. So I came out, I
Wow.
forget what summer that was, but soon after. And I would give the tour 4 or 5 times a day. And everyone on the tour said, are you an actor? Are you an actor? You sit up in front of all these people on the bus, on the tour tram. And I said, no, I want to be a film director. You should be an actor. So it kind of like pushed me that way. So I figured I'd get some photos and see what could happen. And I got some photos done. And soon after, I started booking commercials. So I thought maybe
Well,
this
you
is
have
what
a look. I
oh,
think
thank
you probably knew that maybe where you grew up, but you definitely have like the chiseled jaw. Like when
oh,
when
thank
you
you.
see yourself for the first time when they show you Friday, or even in Chopping Mall, you do have this like you look like you could be a model, so that makes sense.
Well, and I did. Yeah. So that's good. I guess that worked
Yeah.
out. But thank you very much. Yeah, so I started doing stuff and then it started clicking and I kind of put the directing on the back burner. And I guess it's really on the back burner because, I'm continuing acting again. But yeah, that's how it all began. Yeah. Long
Wow. Yeah,
story.
no. No, it is crazy how people get into it because you never know. That's so funny. It was almost like you weren't even thinking of that avenue. Obviously, doing the film or getting the makeup done by John, like you're doing some sort of acting, but it's more
Mhm.
of no. I want to be the person that puts all the pieces together, and then it just how happened on those tours. I'm telling you, I've talked to about a lot of people that's what their start was working on those tours.
Yeah.
It was either
Yeah.
you work on those tours it seemed back in the day or you were the waiter bartender. Like those were the two
Many
jobs. Like,
actors, without a doubt. I did that route too with my many
yeah,
waitering jobs,
yeah.
without a doubt. Yeah.
So commercial wise, do you remember like the first were they national ones or regional?
First
National?
commercial, yes, I remember it very well. It's a funny story.
Wow.
Because it was for a my dog is down here. It was for a store back east called Corvettes, Korvettes, I think it was spelled. And
Okay.
it was I believe it was three Korean veterans, the Korean War veterans that had gotten together and opened this store, like a Woolworths, that kind of store. And they called me in for this spot, or I auditioned for this spot. And I knew I had to be in shorts and a t-shirt, and it was all made of terry cloth and this kind of stuff. And the line in the job, and look at my terry sportswear was the line. And I snap my fingers and I go from my jeans and a jacket to just terry sportswear in the spot. So I have a scar on my left leg just above my kneecap, and it's about that big. And I said, I'm going to be in shorts there. I don't want them to see it. So I had this brilliant idea to bring some crazy glue and some scissors to the audition. And before I go into the audition, I'll go in the men's room and I'll clip some hair from my leg, and in an inconspicuous spot, and I'll crazy glue it over that scar so they don't see it. And they'll just think they won't see the scar. Maybe I'll get booked. And I thought that was brilliant. Well, um, I went into the bathroom and I did it, figuring, my audition was in 15 minutes, but it kept getting later and later. An hour has gone by and, they're still busy and I haven't been called. I finally get called into the room and we're talking, blah, blah, blah. We start the videotape and they say, can you drop your, pants? And I had shorts on underneath and I pulled it down and I see all of their eyes just go like this. And I'm thinking, what the, what's going on? And I looked down and waiting that hour extra, it had all dried really white. So, drew immediate attention to my leg. They go, what's going on down there? I go, oh my God. I go, you won't believe this. I didn't want you to see the scar. So I crazy glued hair to that. They go, you know what? You got the spot. And,
Wow.
and that's how I got my SAG card. Literally from
They're like,
that.
if this guy's willing to crazy glue his leg, we don't have to worry about him being late tomorrow
Yeah.
because he's
If
going to
you're
be
that
here
numb, you
early
gotta
every
give me the
day.
spot. Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah, that's
wow.
how it started, with a little insanity. Yeah.
And then back in the day, it was like you do that, and then somehow you get a manager from that, or did you have a
I never had a
manager
manager
in order to book
ever.
that?
I
Oh,
didn't have
okay.
an agent yet. In fact, the first film I did was called He Knows You're Alone, with Tom Hanks was in that, and I forget who
Oh,
else.
wow.
I never saw him. I worked 1 or 2 days, but I play this guy in the back of a car, and I actually die the same way I died in Friday the 13th Part 2, which is wild.
Really?
Yeah, upside down with a slit throat. But but I got that just by the newspaper Backstage. I don't know if it's still available. I know it's online, but I don't know if it's still available
Yeah.
as a newspaper like most things. But I had answered an ad there and I got that job. But I think Friday the 13th Part 2, I believe, was through an agent. I tried to get an agent in New York and I did. And I had that same agent for many years.
Wow. So right after, so He Knows You're Alone, that's your first time on like a movie set, TV set, and then from right after that was Friday the 13th.
Yeah, pretty soon after that was Friday the 13th. He Knows You're Alone was shot in Staten Island. And Friday
Oh,
the
so you're
13th.
back home, sort of.
Yeah, it was
So
kind
you're
of,
come back.
I was already living in New York City, I believe.
Oh, you
And
you came back. So you went out. You were in LA for a little bit,
yeah,
and then
then
you
I
came
came
back
back.
to like settle in New York.
Yeah, then I went back to LA, and then came back to do a soap opera in the early '90s. So, and then back to LA. But as an actor, most actors are moving around wherever the work is.
Yeah, and that's what it was then too. Like around that era was the famous Harrison Ford story, flipping a coin. Do I go to New York or do I go to
I never even heard
LA?
that. Oh wow!
Yeah. Even like I talked to William Sadler, he had that same kind of thing. Like, do I go to LA right away and do like the movie TV acting?
Right.
Not like you couldn't get TV work or film work in New York, but it was just this different thing. Like
Yeah.
now it seems like everybody can do everything. But back in the day, it was like if you're TV, you're TV. If you're movies, you're
Right.
movies.
And
Nobody would
now
be caught dead in like a TV miniseries back in the
so
day.
true.
You
And
know?
now you look at the TV series, and all the big film stars are now the leads in TV series because
Yep.
they love the money, they love the constant work, and it's pushed everyone else down. When I used to do a lot of guest stars on shows, and, it was called Top of the Show, and now you wouldn't get these things. They're all very well known people are doing them. You're now pushed down to much smaller roles. So I mean, you can still get those roles, but it's a lot of celebrities, a lot of really well known people doing those top
Yeah,
spots.
change. It seemed like maybe you're right. Like the money was so much better for film wise. So like, oh, I'll just do
And
this
a lot
one
of
thing.
work.
But now it's like a lot more filming because you had to think a miniseries. You're 8 episodes. Let's say just ballpark 8 hours. Back in the day, it was like, oh man, let's just do the 90-minute movie. But I think now maybe they just enjoy it more, or maybe the money's better, or
I
maybe
think
the
the
more
money's great,
development
and
of
it's
characters.
a lot of work. Instead of doing a
Yeah,
movie for whatever amount of weeks, you're shooting the series for a long, long time. Although they don't order
yeah,
like they used to. They're not doing 23 episodes.
nah,
But it's a great gig.
yeah, no, definitely. So Friday the 13th, you're in. I'm guessing this one you were in New York.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
how that
It's not that in
happened.
Kent, Connecticut.
And how did you? So were you a fan of the original film? Did you know of
Yeah,
it?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was so cool about getting it? I saw the original. It scared the shit out of me like everyone else. And when that came up, I said, yeah, I would love to do a sequel. And I'm still new in the business, as were most of the actors in Friday the 13th
Oh
Part.
yeah, that
They
was
were all
the way they would do those movies. That's
yeah,
how they could do them for so little because it was like, hey, let's get these up
I
and
know.
coming people, and then and then a lot of people saw just like the Kevin Bacon or Jamie Lee
Right.
Curtis. It was like
Yeah.
horror is the gateway for some people. It is, but so you knew going into the audition like, hey, this is a sequel to Friday the 13th. It wasn't like later when they would change the
Yeah,
title on
back then they
the
didn't do it as much
scripts.
as they do today. Today they, it's all undercover and they call it something
Yeah.
else. Back then we knew it was Friday the 13th Part 2 and that
Yeah.
Paramount was doing it. So audition, I think it was just one time I met with Steve Miller and Red and they offered it to me, which was great. And then, we're all whisked up on a bus up to Connecticut to do the shoot.
Yeah. And now, did you think like while you're doing the movie or like reading the script, and you're like, wait, so the Jason, the boy from the first one? Because I think that's what's so fascinating. There's so many movies that have sequels that maybe, like, I always think of Death Wish because Death Wish, the first movie, he's like sort of like a pacifist. He barely wants to hold a gun. And
Right.
then, like,
Right.
in the third movie, he's blowing people away with rocket launchers. But like Friday the 13th to me is such a, like, it should be studied in a sense, like, and I'm not being like joking. It's so fascinating how it went from the mom seeking revenge, the boy, obviously in the second one, he's a grown man was continuing to live, and then in the third one, when he grabs the hockey mask, it just the change of the character to me is phenomenal.
Yeah, he grew a lot, didn't he? I mean,
He did grow a lot.
yeah. They had to get crazier and crazier, wilder and wilder to keep the audience's attention, I guess. So it got very strange at times, and outer space eventually.
Yes. But they always made money. That's the thing. I know like studios obviously want to make more money maybe when they look at the budget, like, oh, I wish the return was better. But none of the movies ever really lost money. So
Well,
it was weird that they did get to the point, because it was kind of like a yearly thing. Like people knew, like, all right, cool. Next year's a Friday the 13th. There's going to be one of them coming out, and then it just maybe they just didn't get. They were not into it anymore. But that's cool that you're able to be in that film, especially with John. So during this journey, you get this. You're still in contact with him, or was it just so you're on set, you run into him?
Well, I still knew John very well. Yeah, we didn't.
Yeah.
He was still in Troy, although he would travel a lot for work. But I was in New York City at that time. Actually, John had also been in. What am I saying? John was in New York City too, because he was working on. He created. I don't know if he created or put on the Coneheads, for Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
So
wow, that's awesome.
Almost every Saturday, I'd join him at Saturday Night Live to watch the rehearsal and the live show. It was very cool. John Belushi, Gilda, Dan Aykroyd. He introduced me to all of them. And
holy shit.
So that was a very cool time. Yeah. So John was there. He was working at NBC for a long time. So
oh my God. That's a good gig. And then he went on to do so much. Another guy I just talked to, man, what's his last name? Mike, not just talked to, like 4 years ago now, but he just did the makeup on the Penguin. And I think I feel like he won an Oscar for that. But he does all the Heidi Klum. Mike Marino is his name. He was from Suffern, New York, and he worked on SNL in the 90s. He would just go in, and he had some wild stories. He was 18, and they just hired him because they couldn't find anybody that wanted to do these little, hey, you only have like a day to make this random thing where we just wrote a sketch. Yeah. So he had some wild stories, like being an 18-year-old kid, like drinking at these parties, like hanging out with all these older people that obviously became on to who. But man, so when you're going to SNL, that must have been pretty surreal, because those people, I don't know, was it different back then? Were they larger than life?
Well, sure they were. I mean, and that Saturday Night Live had just begun, really. It was in infancy. So, and these guys, I still think we're the best cast at that point. So it was very exciting to be able to be there and watch that and observe that many, many times. It was very cool. And then John won. I want to say this because it's so cool. John won the Academy Award for Dick Tracy, where he created all those.
I read that. Yeah.
And he still works. He does almost every Al Pacino, if not all, Al Pacino film. I just was on the set out here maybe 4 months ago with Al and John. They were shooting a movie where he plays. Is it Hamlet? Maybe I'm wrong about that, but a Shakespearean character, and so they were shooting it out here. But he's still working with Al Pacino.
Yeah, I want to connect with him. We were emailing back and forth trying to figure out a time, but then when I saw like the Albany, I'm like really, what are the chances like that these two people grew up in the same area and then worked on the same film? So one little thing I'm sure people have mentioned when you go to like these horror cons and people talk about like Friday the 13th or Chopping Mall, but Friday the 13th, you're the first ever to be killed by Jason with a machete.
That's true. I never even thought of that. Yeah.
So it became like this thing. Obviously, it was used in the first movie to like chop off Pamela Voorhees' head, but it is a pretty cool thing. Like when I was rewatching the movie, and those movies are there's just something to them. They're so formulaic, and at that point, there wasn't like that formulaic yet because Jason was just getting introduced. But they're just so I don't know how to put it. It's like perfect the way they do the films. You meet like this new group of people, you learn a little bit about each one, then you learn a little bit more, then they die.
Yeah, like, you learn that if you have sex in those movies, you have to die.
Yes.
That's the force.
And how that girl that you were into in that movie, I can't think of her name, but
Kirsten was her real name, Kirsten.
How Mickey Mouse, how a Disney product, like even years later with like, the way they can go in and do CG and stuff, you would think that they would have done something with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't worry about it.
I know.
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
But no, that's pretty cool. And I'm sure from that, that must have been a pretty cool because that's obviously a big film. So was there like a big premiere that you guys all went to? Like, what was that after the shooting?
To be honest, I don't recall that part of it. I do remember all of us having a terrific time during the shoot, and we're happy to be doing a sequel. But as all projects you do, you do the best work you can. You finish the project and you move on, and you think, it's another movie. You have no
Yeah.
idea that it's going to have such a life like this franchise has. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, we're all blessed to be part of it. We had a great time. We're still having a great time meeting the fans, at conventions and just walking down the street. Someone come up to you and say, "You're that guy." I said, "How do you? A long time ago, you still recognize me." It's very
Yeah.
interesting. But the fans are very devoted to this franchise, and it's got incredible legs. It just keeps going. And what's great is, you know, new people keep getting attached to it because people are young people are constantly and horror is gigantic now, so they're being exposed to this film and other horror films, and so it's a new audience constantly. So in
Yeah.
perpetuity, it will be there.
Forever.
Right? Yeah,
Forever and ever you'll be attached to
yeah,
Friday
true.
the 13th. No, that's it's such a great thing. Yeah, that's so true. You never know when you make projects because back then, like VHS tapes were so in its infancy, right? Like the late
Yeah,
'80s, maybe. Like you said, the Super 8 you used to buy, like Charlie Chaplin, but like for full movies, they were like ridiculously expensive. So there was probably a point that you're thinking of about a movie or like I interviewed the director of American Ninja, and when I asked him a question about it, and he was like getting real into it. And I was like, could you imagine like 40 years later you'd be, you know, talking about this?
talking about it
And he was
still.
almost like, I didn't even think we'd be talking about it a year later. Because when you
Yeah,
get done with the movie, you go on to the next movie, and it's almost not that it's forgotten about, but there wasn't like this replay to films as much.
right, right. Yeah. Now it's just everything's available everywhere.
Yeah.
You can find something. Even if it's just on the internet, you want to find a clip or the whole movie. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a good thing and a bad thing. Like too much, too many choices. People don't finish things. I don't think as much because we used to rent a videotape when I was a kid. It was like even if the movie wasn't good, you had to finish it because like that's what you had. That was like your weekend
And
entertainment. And it was
rewind
expensive.
it.
Yes, you had to rewind it. You had to pay
Or
50
they
cents or
charge you
whatever
for
they
it.
used to charge. Yeah, which
Yeah,
is insane.
I know. It's crazy.
I remember we had a machine just a rewinder. Not even
Really?
on the VSR. There was like a rewinder my dad had. So if we were like, oh man, we forgot to rewind, you pop it in, it would like super
Really?
quickly
I
rewind it.
didn't know that.
They had that at the store too. So it was like, we're gonna charge you 50 cents for the electricity to fork it. But yeah, no, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But no, that's cool. No, that was really neat to hear about that. I haven't talked to anybody from that installment. And I think it's just so fascinating because that's that first one when they're like, all right, we gotta like do something with this. What can we do? And it's like, oh, Jason kept growing and he became like
Yeah.
this scary man.
Yeah. Yeah. Tougher and meaner. Yeah. More destructive.
Yeah. So then, right from that, or not too long after that, I'm sure you're just still doing commercial work. There's other
Yeah. We
things.
did a lot of commercials on both coasts, actually. And that was always wonderful. I would always be so excited when, I'd booked a commercial because, you know, there were lines to learn at times, but it's really nice also when you get to do a spot and it's just about your look. You're just playing a character and you don't have to memorize those lines, which is great. But I had a lot of
Were there any exotic locations or even places in the states that you were able to travel to because of
yeah, I did
commercials?
one in Germany in
Whoa.
Stuttgart, I think it was, which was I was the Gammon Man. I think it's GAMMON. It was they paid me to be represent this skincare line, or it was a cologne, it was deodorant, it was skincare products, and it was a terrific commercial we shot in Europe for a few days. And then once I went to New Orleans to do a oh my God, what's that drink? Like a southern drink, like a bourbon or something. I can't remember the
Most
name.
Bourbon Street.
Yeah, there's Rubber Street, but it's like a Southern bourbon that you would think would be in New Orleans. And we shot the commercial there, but it was an Australian company. So we went there and shot all the exteriors. But what was funny is the actual bar stuff They flew me and the girl and the whole crew back to Sydney, Australia to shoot inside a studio, a bar they created, instead of just using a bar while we were in New Orleans. So it was really strange. So I got to see Sydney,
It's
Australia
really
on that,
strange.
which was great. But one of my favorites, I have two favorite spots. One was for DHL, where I play Tom Cruise kind of character in Top Gun. So we're two fighter jets scrambling because there's a van flying through the sky. They're so fast. It was a DHL van. And we say, bogey alert, and we're talking back and forth and we're, flying and we're going crazy. And it finally passes my jet. So it's a terrific spot. And the other one was with Sharon Stone. I did a spot for a Scotch, which was shot
Wow.
at the Biltmore Hotel, I think it was. And we were on a date together. Do you remember in Basic Instinct, she spreads her legs and she has
Yes.
very famous shot in a police
Yeah.
station. So in this commercial, there's this guy in a kilt who's watching her, and she's looking back at him, very intrigued. But I'm with her, and I'm thinking, what the hell are you looking at? I'm your date tonight. And we sit down on the couch, and he sits opposite me. He spreads his legs to me, not to her.
And this was right after Basic Instinct, so it was a gag on that?
We shot this maybe 15 years ago or 12 years ago, something like that. So
Oh
that time
my
had passed.
God.
But it was a very funny commercial, and it was only
That's
seen in
awesome.
Europe and Asia because I think they were outlawed here, those commercials. That was a terrific spot. William Lawson Scotch is the name. If anyone wants to look it up.
I'll see if I can find that. That's really neat that they did that. That's so weird. They do a commercial like that, and then it's not even shown in the United States, where
I think
people
at that time
would
they had
recognize.
liquor ads. They were like hard liquor. They had stopped showing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So that's awesome. Again, it's so cool. No matter what, like you're working, you're getting paid, obviously. But I think the idea of just the travel to it, and the fact that this commercial is paid like good money. Then I'm not saying people that do commercials don't make anything now, but just better now.
Much better. They called them Class A usage, and if you had network spots, you made a lot of money. I did a Hawaiian Punch commercial. Remember Hawaiian Punch? I don't know if that's still around. So
I'm sure it is.
It's when the boxes came out. So we did a box and the can. Maybe there was a third one. Yeah, but we did a box and the can, but a 60 and a 30-second spot of each. And we shot for 2 or 3 days on a boat. We're on this big sailboat, and Hawaiian Punch is a lot of sugar. And dye, of course. I loved it as a kid, though, so it was great to get that spot. I drank it religiously, and here I am doing the commercial. It was karma. But we're on this boat, and we're all getting seasick and drinking this thing. And we would do a shot. And it was supposed to be a beautiful sunny day, and it was overcast and occasionally raining. So they had big lights on the boat to make it look like it was beautiful and sunny. And we're drinking this, and the boat's going like this, and we're vomiting between every shot. Not because of the Hawaiian Punch, just because of the, up and down and just doing this. And we had a smile, pretend we're having a great time, but we're all miserable. But it ran so much between the cans, the boxes, and 30 and a 60-second spot. So in that case, we all did very well on it.
Yeah. What's funny? I was just thinking when you said Hawaiian Punch, like the first thing I think of the punchline from those commercials, do you want a Hawaiian Punch? And then it's like, yeah. But like, I haven't seen that. I don't watch a lot of regular TV anymore, but I don't even know. I don't know if it's still around. I'm surprised I would not have seen that.
Yeah.
But I would feel really weird.
Like, remember Pepto-Bismol? Pepto-Bismol, there used to be lots of commercials for that. I don't even know if that product's still around. I never
I'm still here. Sometimes my camera goes out. But the only reason I know Pepto-Bismol is around is because my buddy had its commercials for all different type of companies. But I was going to do it like 10 years ago. So I went in there for a month to like apprentice. It was the worst job ever. You sat around, did nothing. And then because it was in Manhattan. So then they would call and they'd be like, it would be like LA. They'd be like, all right, we need you to edit this commercial. You're going to have to stay till 11. And I'm like, I was young at the time, but I was already like, dude, when I have kids, I can't be doing that, doing nothing. And then that, but I remember editing a Pepto-Bismol commercial for like, it wasn't even editing. I had to watch it over and over again and see if there was any mistakes. And it was like the biggest, it was torture. And then I was like, I couldn't do that anymore. But yeah, that's cool that you were able to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially that they were able to pay, and like there was only a few channels back. You know, it wasn't like there was a ton of channels for them to air on.
Right.
So there was more obviously to pay out for the advertising.
Yeah. The commercials were terrific back then. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so right after that, obviously you're still auditioning, you're doing commercials, and the next thing on your IMDb is Where the Boys Are in
Yeah.
'84.
I came, funny story there. I've told it before, but maybe your viewers haven't heard it. I came to LA, and literally, I think it was the first few weeks I was here. I had went to get my hair cut. I had asked some other actors I ran into, who cut your hair? And they said, this guy, Jerry Esposito, he lives on Fountain. He does it from his house. So I made an appointment. I went there, and he said to me, bring your photo because I'll put it up, around the mirror, and I cut a lot of famous people, and who knows? So I bring my photo. He puts it up there. And I think within a month later, the producer, Alan Carr, who did Grease and La Cage aux Folles and Can't Stop the Music and some other things. He's getting his haircut, and he says, who's that? And Jerry said, he's a new actor in town, Russell Todd. He said, he's going to star in my movie, Where the Boys Are, '84. And Jerry said, all right. So Jerry gave him my phone number. They connected. I connected with Alan and another producer, Dennis Pregnolato, and it was a TriStar movie. I was called in. I auditioned with Lisa Hartman, with Lauren Luft. A couple times we met, and I got the part. So just from my picture being, in someone's home.
What a way to get it. Did that guy ask for a finder's fee? Is that why he took the photos? Did he get a cut? Could you imagine?
No fighter's fee, but yeah, it was pretty cool. And that's how I got that.
What
And
a,
immediately,
what a way to get a job.
Yeah, it is. We went to Fort Lauderdale. We shot the movie, and it was TriStar Pictures' first movie, and we had a great time.
Really?
Yeah, I used to go to Florida all the time because my grandma lived there, so I was in Fort Lauderdale constantly during the winter. So it was nice to be
there's
back.
some good people in
Yeah,
that. Wendy Shaw's in that.
Lorna Luft, Wendy Shaw, Lynn Holly Johnson, Howard McGillen, who
Christopher McDonald, man, that must have been very early for him.
Yeah, Howard McGillen didn't pass away. Forgive me, Chris McDonald and his brother passed away. Howard? No, I forgot his name. Oh, Dan McDonald. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh my God. Look at that.
Yeah.
Wow. So whenever I interview people, I always go through the IMDb and I watch a few things.
Mhm.
And you had some shows that I don't remember watching as a kid, but one that I was shocked that I never heard of, because again, there's people that are fans of shows and they might be like, oh, this is the best show ever or something. But Riptide?
Oh, Riptide. Yeah.
Oh my God. When I searched for that, I was like, what is Riptide? And I'm telling you, all the reviews were like, this show was better than Heart and Heart, better than all these other like buddy cop shows. I watched it and it was ridiculously funny.
Yeah, it was funny.
Between the two guys, the dynamic was ridiculous. And in your episodes, in the one, you're knocked out for most of it.
With that, we're Arrivederci.
When you come up from the water?
Yeah, we were oceanographers. And in fact, we only spoke Italian, if I remember. And my dad on that show, they called us back to do a second episode because they liked it. They liked us. My dad was Cesar Romero, who was the Joker on Batman, remember? And of course, before that, he was very famous for many things. But, when your dad's Cesar Romero, you're like, wow, this is an incredible job. And, I used to ask Cesar questions about his life because anything he had to say would be, out of a history book for me. And he would tell me about partying with Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford at Pick Fair and playing tennis, all dressed in white, and how they had such style and grace then, and my generation didn't. But he was so cool just to work with him and hear his stories about old Hollywood. But yeah, we did 2 episodes of that, and I think we only spoke Italian in it. We were Italian oceanographers.
Well, he spoke with there was like an American, but a very Italian speaking American.
What was?
Like the way Cesar Romero would speak.
Oh,
it would be like, it was English words, but they were like it was almost like he was speaking like broken Italian. He was like, oh, it's it. Like the way he did it.
Yeah.
But wow, that's amazing. I didn't even realize that was him. But now that you said it, there were so many scenes because obviously he's a legend there were so many scenes he like was going on for so long, and I'm like, I wonder what's going on. It's because it was him probably. He was
Yeah.
funny in that. He was messing with those guys a lot,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in the
yeah.
line, the dialogue he had. But yeah, that's really cool, man. To be able
Was
to
a
work,
cool
that's the
experience.
coolest thing is working with folks, or when I talk to folks and interview them, like just the people, just the connection, like to be able, like you had the connection to Cesar Romero, talking to him, and then that goes to Charlie Chaplin, which goes to kind of something that fueled your beginnings, watching those
True.
Charlie Chaplin films.
Yeah, it really did. It really
Like,
started
what
me
are the
going.
chances?
I know. But I've worked with, I worked with Glenn Ford, who was a very famous Western actor and star. We did a TNT movie together called Border Shootout, where I played a bad guy with a good heart. So at first he's on the wrong side of the law, and then he decides at the end to come around and help the law. And that was a terrific experience. And again, he was a legend. So working with Glenn Ford and Chuck Connors, the rifleman, we did a
Oh
movie
yeah.
together called One Last Run, where I played a ski champion with some other ski guys, and he was like our mentor. And he, almost all of it took place in a bar where we were reminiscing about our experiences.
You said
So
that was the show? Was that High Mountain Rangers
High
or
Mountain
no?
Range is a different one with Robert Conrad. Yeah, we
Oh
shot
my
one
gosh! So
season of
you were
that.
working with all the legends.
Yeah, he was terrific. He was a lot of fun and a tough guy, but a good guy, a fair guy. And we shot up in Lake Tahoe for one season, and we had so many toys on that show. My character was Jim Cutler, and everything I had a lightning bolt on it. So I had a horse that had a lightning bolt right here on its nose. I had a jet ski with a lightning bolt. I had a motorcycle, and what was the other one? I forget. But yeah, that was crazy. We all had to be trained on all of these things, and
Did
living
you
up.
have any experience like working with horses
I
at
never
all?
had ridden a motorcycle in my life, and I probably will not again. I mean, they had us going down really low to the ground, and we're up in the mountains, with the snow, and I'm thinking, I'm going to die on this machine. So I was happy that was over. As far as the motorcycles,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got
yeah.
I got hurt with a jet ski because in one scene I had to take the jet ski and jump from the jet ski to a boat. We were rescuing someone. They had taken the ski ladder off the back of the boat, but they never removed the screws or covered the screws that held the ladder. So I jump on it, I fall. The screw goes right into my bone in my calf, yeah, and below my knee, and so I had to rush me to the hospital. And Lake Tahoe is full of bacteria, which I never knew. So I went to the hospital. They sealed it up. They stitched me. 4 days later, the bacteria was still in there, and it made it totally infected. I thought I was going to lose my leg. So they had to
Jesus.
work on it for a while, and I'm fine now. But crazy experience. Yeah,
Yeah, very crazy. But it is cool again getting a series like at that time to be able
yeah.
to know that you have the continuous work is neat. And then one thing just before I skipped over, because I think it's like a legendary film, because all the people that worked on it, and it was kind of like Jim Wynorski worked on things before that, but this is like the first big thing that he did. And I talked to him, and he's a nut. Chopping Mall is,
Shopping mall. Yeah, it was originally called Killbots.
yes. And then he made one not too long ago that's actually called Killbot. So he made
No, I
like
don't
a
think so.
full
I think
moon.
really no,
Oh
that's the
no, no,
same
I'm sorry. It was called Murderbot.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's
Yeah,
what it was. Yeah.
yeah.
Close.
Shopping mall was great, and it was at the Sherman Oaks Galleria, which is 5 minutes from my home.
Yeah.
I'd shopped there for years. So it was really cool to go there. We would wait till it shut down 6, 7 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night. We'd go in there and we'd destroy the place all night until the morning when we had to be out, being chased by killer robots. It was, it's become a cult film. I can't tell you how many people stop me or where I'm at an event and they'll say, that's my favorite. I just love that. It was so perfectly 80s,
Yeah.
its story and the way it was done. Yeah, that was good times with Jim and the cast.
Yeah. Great. Like great cast. And again, like it's so hokey, but it's fun. Like
It worked. It
watching the
worked.
robots like look at each other, or
Yeah,
even
yeah.
with I can't think of the guy's name. Man, he is such a great character actor. He plays like the scientist who's working in the lab, and he's looking.
Oh, yeah, I
He's
don't
more
know
like
his name either. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
but
know.
he's in a million things. Like I
Yeah,
know he's the father, he's the stepdad in Child's Play too. Like he's in a ton of stuff. But like even him, like he's hearing like a sound behind him, and every time he looks, like the robot's like sort of moving, and he's just like, "Yeah, I'm totally fine. I'm gonna continue eating." And then he gets like it in the back. But
yeah.
just the actresses in that movie too are like iconic. Like Barbara, that was
Barbara Crampton.
Barbara's probably her second. She did Fraternity Vacation like right around that time,
Hmm.
but that was like a big film for her, and she's still doing it, and she
Yeah,
actually looks
I see
exactly the
Barbara,
same.
I see Kelly, I see Barbara, I see Tony.
Yeah,
We still see each other at events, or just run into each other. So it's really nice.
yeah. But Kelly, right after this, she did, or was really right on the same Fast Times. Might have been
Fast Times
just
at
before this,
Ridgemont, yeah,
right?
yeah.
But yeah, just such a fun movie, and again, it's silly the idea of it's in a mall. These robots go
Opening night when the
insane.
robots are just being put online, and of course, lightning bolt hits the transformer on the roof,
Yeah,
and they go
and
crazy.
let's party in the furniture store, which was such a trope. Like, I don't know if it was from this movie, but when I was a kid in the 90s, there were so many shows that did not the horror aspect of it, but it was like, hey, let's sneak into the mall. I remember Saved by the Bell did it. It was like a whole episode of them being like, let's camp in the sporting goods store in the mall.
Right? Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Just so much fun like reminiscing. But again, like you talked about it earlier when your move back to New York was for Another World. Were you
Another world,
have you
yeah,
auditioned for a soap prior to this, or was this your first like soap
yeah.
opera experience?
I had done some other stuff on soaps with smaller things, and I had no intention of going back to New York, but I still did the audition, and I remember being in my den and getting a call saying they'd like you to hire you. I had gone into they flew me to New York to do an actual test with Anne Heche on the stage, and I didn't think it was going to happen. But I came home, and a few days later, I got the call, and they said, "Well, you're going to have to come. It's a 3-year contract." And I thought, wow, I'm going to move to New York for 3 years. But I was very excited. And yeah, I spent 3 years there, lived in the city, shot in Brooklyn, um,
It's a
and
good
made some good
life.
friends. What's that?
That's a good life. Like in that at that time, New York was New York was good. It was clean at that point, right? That was right after. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no.
No, still not
Saying
good.
he cleaned up New York a little later than I think a few years later after I
Oh,
left.
Giuliani. It was 92,
Giuliani,
right? Maybe or 94. That was Ed Koch still there when you were there,
I think
or
so.
Dinkin. One of
I think
those.
it was Koch. I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But Giuliani's
But
the
yeah,
one he
no,
had to
that's
clean up 42nd Street. He sanitized the whole city in his own little way, and yeah.
yeah. But so was the soap just from people I talked to, and it's funny, a lot of those people that you worked with in horror, it seemed like so many people, because I know God, there's so many that went to soap operas. I feel like Barbara was on one.
Yeah, she was.
I feel like a lot of that cast was not in one.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like
coincidentally, I think
Kelly was on
there's
one.
no correlation. The only correlation I can think of is not with getting the job, but the fans. The fans
Yeah.
of soaps and the fans of horror films are very similar in the sense that they're incredible fans. They stick with you, and when you're on a soap opera, you're in their house 50 weeks or 52 weeks a year. You work
Yeah.
50 weeks, but you're in their homes 52 weeks, and they feel they know you because they see you 5 days a week, and the fans are just so attached. And the same with horror; they really attach to your characters and to you as an actor. So there's a great similarity that I always think between soaps and
Yeah, I
horror.
wonder what it is. Like what could it be? Because it's not like they're uh, it's not like the pacing's the same or anything, but maybe it's just the way they. I don't know. But you're right. That is true. Those are the two. Like I talked to Patricia Darbo, and she talked about like when she was on Bold and the Beautiful, I believe. She
Mhm.
was just like they went nuts. Like she did one episode, and she was in stuff before that, but people noticed. And I'm sure that happened to you, like being in New York or having to be in a city that's walkable. So for the
Oh
most
yeah,
part, you're not really, you're not driving too much. Do you
yeah.
remember like being noticed, like how soon
Oh, in
after
New
that
York
first
City, it
episode?
happened a lot. I remember the first week that my episode started airing on Another World, I was at the gym, and I remember being on a treadmill, And there were TVs up there, and one of them had Another World, and it was playing. And then I started remembering that, I was getting off the trailer, and people started, following me, and one person came up to me. It was new to all of us because I had just started airing on the show. But that started happening a lot in New York. I'd be walking around, I'd be at Macy's looking at clothing, and suddenly I'd see some women following me in a restaurant. Yeah, I've been stopped in the bathroom at a restaurant. My wife really wants your autograph. Do you mind when you come out if you could get an autograph? Yeah, it was pretty crazy because again, you're so visible on the soap if you're working 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And in New York
What
City,
was the shooting something you had to get used to? Because it's more like, all right, let's get this done because there's a lot of pages to do every single day.
that's the toughest part, I think, on a soap is the memorization, and it gets easier and easier. Your mind is like a muscle. Your brain, suddenly the words were jumping off the page into your memory. But at first,
Yeah.
it was very difficult because the amount of words, an entire script in one day, not 3 or 4 or 8 pages like a movie, but an entire script in one day is being shot. So that was the toughest part, and it's in a sense, it's a factory. You're going in almost every day and doing this character and these stories. So you're spitting it out, and a lot of times they don't have you can't do 3, 4, 5 takes. They want you to get it. Sometimes
Yeah.
you'd have the giggles, which happened a lot actually, especially with Carmen Duncan, who I miss. We would laugh hysterically and come on, we'd hear from above. We got to move on. We got to move on. Good time.
That's awesome. So since the way you got into the acting, when it was like, hey, are you an actor? And you finally were like, yeah, and then that all started. Was there time that you had in between shooting that like, or auditioning that you did training or took classes or anything like that?
Not while I was doing the show, but before the show, I had trained. I'd worked with Lee Strasberg at himself in a group class at the Strasberg studio.
Wow.
Out here, I worked with another teacher in Los Angeles. But yeah, I think, there was always that. I took a comedy course to try to improve my comedy timing. Yeah, I think it's always good to work on yourself. That's always
Yeah, it's
helpful.
always good to sharpen your tools and learn from other people or learn what not to do from other people. It's always good to do that. That's awesome. So what? So obviously, I know the answer to this question, like because you in the beginning, your dream was to be a director. Like that's what you thought about, and obviously that got altered. Was there any other career paths that you had in your mind? Obviously, to do this business, you have to have that blinders on, like a horse, because it's so the failure rate's so high
There is.
in Hollywood and being an acting. But was there any other careers that you thought of growing up?
I always wanted to be in the entertainment industry. Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
always did. And I guess, like I said, my mom was a singer, so there was that influence. My parents were terrific. They always exposed myself and my 2 brothers to film, to theater, to concerts, to the arts. So it was always right there in my face, and I just gravitated toward it.
Did they
And
go into the arts at all, your brothers?
no, no, they went a different direction. But I guess it was just, early on, I thought this is the world I want to be part of. I
Yeah.
didn't know what at first, where I would land. But yeah, always in the industry. And then, when I left the soap opera, I came back and I opened up an agency. I don't know if you knew that, where I
Oh, no
represented.
way. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was my name, so I would remember it when I would wake up. But I represented about 60 of the steadicam operators in the industry, all over the
Sweet.
country, and some in Europe as well, and Australia. So I had that company. I took a break from acting for 24 years, and I just did this, and it was a fantastic move. It was a great company. I'd loved working with the guys and the girls in the studios, and it was a great move. But then I sold the company a year and a half ago, and it still exists as my name, but someone else
Oh,
owns it.
yeah.
Yeah, and I went back into acting, and it's been working. I've got a few movies coming out, a few things coming out, which is great.
That's awesome. That's so
Yeah.
Steadicam was cool. I talked to a guy, then you probably know him, but I can't think of his name right now. God, he was like one of the early Steadicam operators, and he was like training people on Steadicam. I can't think of his name. All I can say is maybe this will trigger something. after he was still doing Steadicam, he ended up working on Key and Peele. He was like
I
a
don't know.
main
I'm not
guy
sure
on
who
Key
that
and
was.
Peele. But
Yeah.
but Steadicam, that was such a big thing. So that's pretty cool that
Still.
that
Yeah.
you think everybody has agents, right? And
Yeah, but no one really repped them. I think I had started that. I believe there was really no agency, and my agency was just Steadicam operators. So
yeah.
that was, it was a real niche. It was the first time they had that representation, I believe. And I started at a different company where I was just assisting. Excuse me. And a guy walked in one day and he said, "Do you rep Steadicam operators?" And I said, "I'll get back to you." And I found out that really nobody was doing it. So I opened up a division at that agency. And that was about 2.5 years. And I decided maybe I should do this on my own. And then I opened up the Russell Todd agency. And that, like I said, lasted for about 24 years. And it's still
Wow.
going, but under someone else's
Yeah.
direction. Yeah.
But that's cool. You're able to hey, go back to acting from that. That's
Yeah, I've
neat.
got a movie coming out in September or the beginning of October called Stiletto, which I'm very proud of. And I have a small part in it, but it's a terrific part. I play a mysterious guy, and he was a great
You have a
character.
lot on here.
What's that?
You have a lot like on
Oh,
IMDb,
you're
the
looking at IMDb? Yeah, some new things.
upcoming, yeah.
Yeah, another one called If It Bleeds, which is an anthology. There's 3 sections of it, 3 kind of short films put together, and I play which I never played before, a real nerdy guy in that, which I really enjoyed doing, and that's coming out either later this year or the beginning of next year. I got to play with the same producer. I got to play the President of the United States with Kelly from Chopping Wall. She was
Oh,
she played.
really?
We did a debate, and I was the existing president, and she was wanted to become president in the debate, and so that's going to be in another movie called Sweetest Day. I just booked a movie a few days ago. There was a movie that just came out called Unholy Song.
Okay.
They're going to do a sequel already, Unholy Song 2.
Oh, cool. I see that on here. Nice.
Yeah, I just got booked a few days ago to have a lead role in that. So that's going to be exciting. We're going to shoot that, I think, in July, August.
That's
Yeah,
really
so
cool. So how'd you get everything back out there, your name out there? Again, is it just,
I'll tell
hey,
you.
I'm going to those auditions? How does that start?
Well, I'll tell you. Do you know Doug Jones? Doug is
Yes. Yep.
The Shape of Water. He was the creature in The Shape of Water. He's been
He's
in a number of
everything.
movies and everything.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic actor and a fantastic person.
He's
And we worked
Mac.
with
He's Mac. Do you remember he was like the moon in
totally, yeah, back the
Mac
night.
at night?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's
I talked to the
great.
special effects guy that did that, and I'm like, dude, that is so amazing. Like,
It's a
just
cool piece of history
the
and a cool thing.
weirdest like ad as a kid. Like, it was like, hey, adults, McDonald's at night. It
Yeah,
was
that's
cool.
fantastic. But
Yeah.
he's done so many things. But we went to a Christmas party 2 years ago, and there was a guy there, Matt, who is a producer, and Doug introduced me to Matt. Matt said, "I know who you are. You were in Friday the 13th Part 2." And we talked, and that was it. Went home. And then New Year's comes, and like 2 days into the new year, on Instagram, I hit Matt up and just say, "It was really great meeting you, Matt. Be great to work together someday." And he hits me right back. He goes, "Got a movie coming up. I'd love you to play the bad guy." And that was Stiletto. Literally 3-4 weeks later, I was shooting it. So that's how I got back that. And then
Wow.
from that, the same producer did The Sweetest Day, where I played the president. And then I worked on something else, which everything has been connected through people I've
Yeah.
worked with. So it's a very social business, so much about contacts and people liking you, of course, and you liking them, and you
Totally. Yeah.
work well
Because
together.
they want to work with you, especially
Yeah,
when they're bringing people in. They're like, all right, I want somebody that I know that I'm going to get along with,
yeah,
and
that's important.
and
That's
is
very
good and going to hit their lines and be professional. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
So that's how it all came back. I do have an agent again, but all of these things have happened just through social connection.
That's awesome. So now one of my favorite things to ask, because I feel like you never think of what moments are going to matter. It's like so many times, like even when I was younger, before cell phones and taking pictures, or it's not like I walked around with a camera, but there's so many moments when you think back, I wish I had this, or I wish I kept something. Early on in your career, did you keep any mementos, any scripts,
Yeah,
any like,
I have the original script from Friday the 13th. The script from Where the Boys Are. I have a little memorabilia from Another World. I have my, I play the head surgeon at a hospital at Bay City hospital, Bay City General, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I had my badge, with my
Oh, that's
name on it
cool.
still. For Christmas, they gave us these coasters that had the crystal coasters that said "Another World." I have that. A jacket they had given me that says "Another World" on the back. Um, I have a lot of scripts, actually, original scripts from things I've shot. Some clothing. Yeah.
The scripts are neat. I think that's cool because it's like a window into, obviously having the script is cool, but I think the notes that you might have written at the
Yes.
time, like I think
Yeah.
that's really cool to think of where your head was as an actor or at that age. You got to think that it's like looking at an old diary.
It
Sometimes
really
there's probably
is.
scribbles that you
True.
have in there and you're like,
Yeah.
why the hell was I writing that? Or, oh,
And
wow, I
sometimes
can't
it
believe I
feels
thought
like
about that.
somebody else. It's so many years
Yeah.
ago that it's almost someone else's life. It's so much has transpired since those times that when you look back, it's that was me. It's interesting.
Do
Yeah.
you feel it? Like when you look back at like that, so say if like you were flipping through the channels and like Friday the 13th comes on and you see yourself, do you think like, oh my God, I can't believe that was 43 years ago,
Oh
44
yeah.
years ago?
I mean,
Yeah.
so much time. 44 years ago, just May 1st is when it came
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th Part Two, and it's hard to believe because you blink your eyes and you're 3 decades later or 4 decades later, and where does it go? I know it goes faster and
I
faster.
don't know.
Yeah.
Even since I just had kids, really, I feel like you never see, like, even looking in the mirror, you can look older. You can maybe like, oh man, I'm not getting out of bed as fast, and like those kind of things. But like when you see, like, when there's like a human in your house growing, and you're like, oh man, this is going way too quick. My daughter's way
Yeah.
too tall.
Yeah.
She's only 6. And it's just like, yeah, no, it's insanity. But it's cool that you kept those things.
Yeah.
I think some people want to ask that question when they don't have those things, or at the time, people don't think about that. It's like, all right, on to the
Sure.
next job, but it's cool to grab, hey, let me have the script to be able to have that memory.
Yeah, a lot of people that are on, hit TV shows, they take a little something from that set at the end and, as a memento, which is nice. It is very nice.
Yeah. No, it's really neat. So you mentioned you were able to play the first time you're playing like a nerdy type of guy. In your upcoming, while you're back to acting, is there a particular role or a type of genre that you like to try if you could have your pick?
I think I'm doing it now for, I was always cast as the good guy, Another World. He was such a nice guy, Dr. Jamie Frame, and a lot of shows I've done, usually, the nice guy or the dad or something. But lately I've been playing bad guys, evil or just bad or just on the wrong side of the law. And it's fantastic. It's really
Yeah,
great,
yeah.
uh, and it's just meaty, roles. And I've been very lucky since I've been back to get those. And this new one with an unholy song too. He's a bad guy and evil at least, and it's exciting. It's nice, not to be pigeonholed into one,
Yeah,
type of role, which I used to be. It's expanding and really enjoying that.
that's awesome. It's so cool that you were able to be like, hey, I'm going to do this agent, steadicam operators, and you have an agency. Then when you get back into it, you hit the ground running, kind of like the way you started. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
right, that's good.
kind of cool. I mean, I'm very happy. I'm very blessed and grateful that I can come back to it, and I think it's a much better time for me. When you're beginning and you start as an actor, there's a lot of insecurity. There's insecurity through all of it, of course, but there's so
Yeah,
much just beginning. You're so concerned about getting work, having a career, making money to live, so much. Now, I'm not worried about those things. Now I'm just having fun. So I think my work
yeah.
is better. I know it's better. The performances are better. I'm more comfortable. I'm enjoying it more. And, you can't buy that. It's
Yeah, you're
just,
freer. It's
yeah,
like when yeah, but you're right. Sometimes you can, if you really need something so bad, you can come off desperate. If you're like, oh,
yeah,
sometimes that might work. Be like, I need this job. Like as a 21-year-old, I need to pay my rent this month. But
sure.
no, it makes it a lot easier mentally when you can go into something and you're like,
Very much.
this doesn't matter. Like I want this, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Well,
True.
Russell, man, I'm happy we connected. This has been a lot of fun.
Me
I think it's so
too.
cool when you
Thank
talk to people when I do these, and I take like kind of like pride in it. These aren't things that people talk about too often. It's not like an actor say, "Hey, how'd you get started?" So I always think it's really cool. Like when I first started this, I was obviously sort of nervous I could always talk to people because I did door-to-door sales for years, but I always was like, man, what can make this unique? And
Right.
like I talked to Eric Roberts, and he was like, I couldn't believe he was just like, oh man, what a trip down memory lane. I never talk about those films, or because
Yeah.
I was like, I'm sure Eric gets asked about all these films that everybody knows. It's all about like watching those other ones because you never know, like from anybody's IMDb, like what's gonna have like that big memory for them.
Right.
So
I just mentioned
yeah,
that Eric and I just did a podcast together. I never saw Eric that day because we went into the studio in different times, but it's called
yeah.
Seduction, and it's going to be coming out, I think, in September on all those podcast
Oh,
platforms.
like an audio story,
Yeah,
like an
it,
old
it was a
radio
story. I
play.
played Tony, the lead guy in it. I forget which role Eric is playing, but it's pretty much a true story, and it's a terrific story, and that'll be coming out. But I run into Eric at conventions a lot, and he's just great. He'll come up to you and grab you and hug you and rub your head, and he's got a great sense of humor, and he
He
works
has a lot
nonstop.
of fun. He
He has a
really
lot.
loves what he does. Like
He
he
does.
does all those films, and it was great. Like he basically like answered the question before I even asked it, but he's like in '95. I just said I'm gonna start saying yes to these movies, and he was like, man, I was able to go to India this one time, able to do this, and like all these different. And his wife's amazing too.
Yeah.
His wife's super famous, and like I'm not saying I would know her before. Obviously, I know Eric, but just my dad had me watch Animal House so many times as a kid. So
Hmm.
knowing, like, oh my god, look at her, like in that movie, man.
Yeah.
So no,
Yeah. It's
it
cool.
is neat, and it's that's cool. The radio play thing, I got to look into those more because my
Yeah.
wife had one that was like Jason Alexander about some hotel one time. It was super enjoyable on a road trip. So I'll have to check it out.
Check this out.
Seduction,
Yeah. Seduction. It's called.
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Russell. I appreciate
Thank
it, man.
you.
When
And
this
if you
comes, this will be out next month, and I'll send you the link. But best of luck, man.
Right. And if people want to check me out on Instagram, it's Russell Todd LA. And also, I
Perfect.
just recently signed up for that Cameo where people can get videos because I've been
Oh,
getting
really? Cool.
yeah, people have been writing me on Instagram, can I get a video? So I said, let's do it through Cameo. So that's available too.
Oh, cool. What would have been the most so far that you've gotten? Soap related or horror related? Like when the request wise?
One was a couple of soap fans. So I did it for them and there was soap. Another was a question about another soap I did called Capital, where I came in and replaced someone who got in an accident in real life, and I
Oh my
replaced
God.
that guy played Geordie Clegg. I think it was like for 6-8 months. So they had asked me some stories about that. Those are the recent two. Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll put the links for those in there. Those are really neat because if you don't have the opportunity to go to Comic Cons or they're not in your area, at least you could still
Yeah,
ask those questions and interact with people.
sure.
Awesome, Russell. Have a great rest of your day. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Doug. Thank you very much.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.